Hey, shalom, shalom, everybody. Bokoto. This is day 4 of Sukkot Tabernacles Feast of Ingathering, and we starting fires in these little fire pits. I took a video of the little fire pit that we're using. We do have a big ring fire pit right over across the way. It's bigger, but these little fire pits right here are very good, you know, as far as keeping the fire off the ground, because out here in Missouri right now it's still really dry. We did get some rain, I think yesterday we got a little bit of rain, told our y'all for that, but the ground is still dry, the grass is still really dry, so you have to be very careful about making fires on the ground. And we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think we got about 10 different people out here with fires. So the fire pits help keeps the fire off the ground, so the fire don't spread. You can contain it a lot better. So we just all sitting around the fire. It is a little chilly this morning, so we all sitting around the fire and everything. But if there's anything exciting that happens today, then I'll vlog it. But if not, then we're gonna go ahead and continue on to the 5th day. We do have some errands that we gotta run today. We gotta go out to town, so take care of some business. But with that being said, just want to say shalom to you all, co-Israel scattered throughout the 4 corners of the earth. Continue to seek Yah, continue to walk in His understanding and knowledge. Continue to allow the Ruach, the Spirit of Yah, to lead you in everything that you do. That everything that you do be pleasing before the Most High, you know. And fellowship together, come together in unity, so that we can edify each other in these last and evil days. So once again, if you're new listener to this YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe. If you are a reoccurring listener, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. I have a lot of teachings that I'm going to be dropping on my channel. I have a flood of teachings I'm going to be dropping on my channel that I've been pre-recording. Some of them will be pre-recorded, some of them will be live, but you don't want to miss the 3 segments that I'm going to be doing each week, at least for 2 or 3 months. I'm going to be doing 3 segments each week on Sunday, 8 o'clock Central Time, 9 o'clock Eastern Time p.m. I will be doing a segment called Fact Check, where we will be talking about controversial doctrinal topics according to Scripture, and bringing clarity and bringing the facts of those particular topics to light. And then on Tuesday, the same time, 8 o'clock Central and 9 o'clock Eastern p.m., I'm going to be doing a segment called Prophetic Word and Insight. We're going to be dealing with prophecy, getting into end-time prophecy and stuff like that. Okay? And then always on Thursday, I will be doing teachable moment segments at the same exact time, all right? So with that being said, co-Israel, stay tuned. We hope that you all connect with us. And if you're in the St. Louis area, you want to connect with us, you want to fellowship, things of that nature, make sure you reach out to me at relit.mo@gmail.com, relit.mo@gmail.com. Shalom, co-Israel. My name is Rahab Pathwell Ben Yaakov, and this is Israelites Relit Ministry. I'm just bringing you all to and through our 2002 Sukkot Tabernacle and Ingathering Feast. I'm just going to be taking little clips here and vlogging certain things that we're doing as far as our experience keeping the tabernacles and Sukkot. And like I said in one video, Sukkot is one of my most favorites feasts to observe. There's so much peace and tranquility, rest, relaxation, and things of that nature that I personally do. And like I said, I try to take off the whole entire week so I can enjoy, spend time with my family, spend time with the brethren and the sisters and this fellowship and everything of that nature. We had a great discussion on today, which is the fourth day of our feast. We're just talking about the spiritual analogies of tabernacles and how it correlates with the revelation, the testimony of Yahshua HaMashiach, and how it relates to our everyday lives as far as what things we should be producing in our character, in our walk, in our talk, and how we interact with each other. And it's just been a blessing just to be able to fellowship and have some time to reflect upon, what type of productivity, what type of increase, and things that I have lacked, things that I have grown in, matured in the last 7 months. So we told our Yah for that. On today, I just want to give a brief summary of some things concerning tabernacles. And one thing about the feast, there's just so many analogies, so many comparisons that we can make, both physical and spiritual. And the comparisons are it's numerous. You can go on and on talking about it. But one of the things that I want us to understand about tabernacles and ingathering particularly is the harvest. The harvest is very important as it relates to the month of Abib, which is the first month of the Hebrew year, in which we have Passover. Also, we have Pentecost, or the Feast of Harvest. Some people call it the Feast of First Fruits. Some people call it the Feast of Weeks. Any of those characteristics or the calendarization of that particular feast is permissible. Okay, you can call it either one. We go from there to the Feast of Shofar, Feast of Trumpets, then the Day of Atonement. Then we have Tabernacles and Ingathering. And between Passover, Pesach, and Pentecost, or First Fruits, or Feast of Harvest, and Tabernacles, these three feasts are very important because the Torah tells us that thrice or 3 times in a year shall your males appear before Yah. And these 3 feasts are Passover, Pentecost, or Feast of First Fruits, Feast of Harvest, Feast of Weeks, and Tabernacles and gather. The significance of these 3 main feasts is that they are all agricultural feasts. They tie in with the agricultural season, okay? And I'm going to show you a description of that. We're going to get into that, and I'll reveal that to you. And then I want to tie that into the parable of the wheat and the tare that Yahshua gave concerning the analogies, or the parable that he gave concerning the end of the world. Because this is very important. Because tabernacle, Feast of Ingathering, marks the end of the agricultural season within that 7-month period between Abib, Passover, Feast of Unleavened Bread, Pentecost, or Feast of Harvest, Feast of First Fruits, Feast of Weeks, to Tabernacles, is the end of the growing season as far as agricultural or farming or crops, okay? And particularly the planting of wheat and the harvesting of wheat and barley. That's very important to understand. That's very significant. Even Yahshua gives that analogy in his parable. So I want to dive into that. With that being said, before we get into that, if you are a first-time listener, if you are a recurring listener, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is Israelites Relit. Also, we are Israelites Relit on Facebook and on Instagram. Also, if you're looking for fellowship, if you're looking for a place to keep the feast and fellowship and break bread and get into the word, discuss the word, and hear the teaching and preaching of the word, I invite you to reach out to me via email. My email address is relit.mo@gmail.com, relit.mo@gmail.com. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into the teaching. All right. We are going to go to the book of Exodus. Let's go to the book of Exodus, Shemoth, chapter 23, verse 15 through verse 16. I'm going to just do a brief summary. There's so much more in-depth understanding to this, but I just want to touch the surface because I don't want to be before you long, all right? Exodus chapter 23, verse 15 through verse 16. Shemoth, Exodus chapter 23, verse 15 through verse 16. And it states, thou shalt keep the feast of unleavened bread. Thou shalt eat unleavened bread 7 days, as I commanded you in the time appointed of the month of Abib. For in it thou camest out of or from Mizraim or Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty. Now, I want to denote the month of Abib because this is very important to understand. When you look this particular word up right here, this word means the tender ear of grain, the tender ear of grain. This is very important to understand because the month of Abib marks the renewing of life agriculturally. It is when you begin to see new sprouts, new greenery, new leaves, new budding of the trees, the flowers, plants. It is also known as seed sowing time. This is a time where our ancestors sow seeds. Now, I've been doing agricultural work for basically all my life, from probably about 30 years, even probably longer than that, okay? I grew up in a place in South Carolina. We started a community out there in South Carolina. And I grew up there working in the garden, working in the field, tending to livestock. So I understand about agriculture. I'm a farmer. That's what I've done most of my life. Okay, so when you are a farmer, you tend to a garden, you tend to certain things agriculturally. You can see how this ties into the feast. You can see how this ties into the months of the year because each plant has its particular season. Okay, there's summer crops, there's spring crops, and there's also things you can plant in winter as well that can survive the coldness and the harshness of the winter months. But the main bulk of your food that you want to store up and the food that you want to eat during that time would grow between in October, between those particular months, okay? And within those particular months in the Hebrew culture, a bib signified the shooting forth of greenery, the shooting forth of those seeds that are sown during that time. It's a seed sowing time, okay? And that's very important to understand, all right? So look that word up, Abib, and you'll see that. All right. It says in verse 16, and the feast of harvest, the first fruits. So the feast of harvest is talking about first fruits. We know that during Passover and unleavened bread, you count 50 Shabbats after Passover and unleavened bread. Then you have what we call first fruits. Now, first fruits is the feast that indicates the harvesting of the first produce or the first crops that were planted in the month of Abib or in seed sowing time. Now you're getting the fruit or the increase from those crops. So the first crops or the first fruit of those plants, those things were dedicated unto Yah. We would give Yah honor and praise for the bounty for the wheat harvest and for the barley harvest, okay? And I'm not going to go in depth into that, but you can do your own research, do your own study, and you'll see exactly what I'm referring to, okay? So he says, and the feast of harvest and first fruits of thy labor which thou hast sown in the field. See that, sown in the field. So the month of Abib indicates the time of seed sowing. That's when you sow your seeds in the field. And the feast of ingathering, which is in the end of the year. Now that word year in the Hebrew is Shanai. Shanai. Now Shanai, it simply means the ending of a revolution of time or a cycle of something. So here we're talking about the agricultural cycle. So the Feast of Ingathering or the Feast of Tabernacles marks the ending of the agricultural growing season. That's when they would gather in the last of their harvest from the time they planted the seed in the month of Abib to the time of first fruits or the Feast of Harvest when they get the first produce from those plants or from those crops. Then you have the harvest season. You begin to go out there and harvest things. You begin to go out there and pick things throughout that duration of time until you get to about this time of the year, which is the fall of the year. Then those particular crops begin to stop yielding because that is out of season for that particular plant or that particular crop to yield. So that would mark the in gathering. You are gathering in the last of your crops to be able to give you provisions through the winter months whereby you cannot grow certain things or the bulk of crops or things of that nature that you would eat or things that would sustain your life throughout the winter months, okay? Now look at this. Let's go back. Feast of Harvest. Okay, like I said, first fruit is called the Feast of Harvest. Why? Because that's the first time that you will go and harvest your crop. From that time, or that first time that you get your crop or get your harvest, you will begin to harvest crops until that particular revolution of time or that agricultural season ended. This is the time, Tabernacles and Ingathering is the time whereby those crops will stop yielding and you will go out there and gather the last of your crops. And that's why we hold these feasts. Why? Because we reflect upon the bounty that the Most High has provided for us through the harvest season, okay? So remember that. Ingathering is the end of the Shana, is the end of that revolution of time, is the ending of that harvest, it's the end of the harvest, okay? Remember that, end of the harvest, all right? So that's what ingathering signifies. Now look at this. Let's go to Matthew chapter 13, verse 24. I want to show you little tidbits of things that Messiah mentions in his parable that we can connect back to the three main feasts. That is Passover, Pesach, Feast of First Fruit, which is known as Pentecost, or Feast of Harvest, or Feast of Weeks, and Tabernacles and Ingathering, okay? Tabernacles and Ingathering, you see that in Leviticus chapter 23. They both happen on the 7th month and the 15th day of that 7th month, okay? Matthew chapter 13, verse 24. Look what he says. Messiah says, another parable put he forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. So here we have the seed sowing time, whereby the man is sowing good seed in his field. This marks Abib. Also, we can see here in verse 25, but while men slept, his enemy came and sowed terror among the wheat and went his way. Now, let's skip down to verse 26, but then we're going to skip back up to verse 25 because there's something that I want to emphasize in verse 25. But let's go to verse 26 first. He says, but when the blades were sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So here we see, but when the blade sprung up, that sprung up there marks Abib. That is the time of Abib. That's time of Passover, okay? The Passover season. Remember that Abib means what? The tender ear of grain. It says, and brought forth fruit. Brought forth fruit. That indicates what? The first fruit. Now we see the seed that the good seed that the man has sown is sprouting, is germinating, okay? That's that Abib season. The ear or the sprouting forth of greenery, the sprouting forth of budding. That's what that means, Abib. Then we go into the fruit being brought forth, which is the first fruit, okay? Then he says, then appeared the tares also. So in this particular growing season or agricultural season, the tare that the enemy sown in the field is now coming forth as well. Now let's go back up to verse 25 because I want to emphasize the word tear here. The word tear here. It's very important to understand what this word tear here indicates. It says in verse 25, skipping back up to verse 25 of Matthew chapter 13. But while men slept, his enemies came and sowed tares, Zianion in the Greek. Its origin is uncertain, but it means darnel or false grain. Okay, that's what it means, darnel or false grain. Darnel, false grain, looks just like wheat. It's green like wheat. It has the very shape of the wheat. Even the sprouting of the stalk, even the grain looks the same, okay? But when you look into this further, it's actually poisonous, okay? It's poisonous. And that's very important to understand because the enemy will come in to a congregation. The enemy will try to come into your life. The enemy will try to do anything that he can to sow terror into your life, okay? Even in the house of Israel, we see this, that there are wheat Israelites who are wheat, and there are Israelites who are tare. They are poisonous. They are darnel, or false grain. They are false wheat. They look like wheat, but they don't yield the same fruit as wheat, and their fruit is poisonous. They are poisonous, or they spew poison. Their attitude is poison. Their character is poison. Why? Because they are false. Even we can see that with the people. The true house of Israel has been replaced by what? Darnel, false wheat. So the enemy has come in and not only sown false wheat within our lives, he tries to sow false wheat within our lives, or false grain within our lives. He also has sown in false Israelites among the true Israelites. That can be a person of color, or that could be a person that's not of color. We can even see that with the Ish people as a nation. The enemy has sown them in as the wheat, or as the wheat, but they are false wheat. They are not of the true lineage of the house of Israel. So we have to understand the analogy of what's going on here. And this is why it's so important for us to observe the feasts, because these feasts give us such in-depth prophecy, prophetic revelation into what's happened in present, and what's happened in the past, and what's going to happen in the future. Now, look what he goes on to say here. He says in verse 27, he says, "So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, does not thou sow good seed in thy field? From which then has it tare?" Verse 28, he said unto them, "An enemy has done this." The servant said unto him, "Wilt thou then that we go and gather them up?" He said, do you want us to go out here and harvest it? Do you want us to go out here and gather this wheat, the tare, from the wheat? Now understand that this is the infant stages of the wheat's process to mature. Okay, we got to understand there's a reason why the Most High has not put us as true Israelites in our land as of yet, because the Most High has a time and a season for all things. To every purpose, there is a time and a season. And the Most High has a systematic and chronological time frame in which, and even in how he does things. The Most High just don't do things sporadically. He's very methodical, and he calculates what he does. Even though we might not understand exactly how Yah does things, or why he does things, or the time frame in which he does things, we must trust his timing. That's why it's important for us to be patient and wait. I've seen people lose faith in Yahshua HaMashiach. They have turned away from the faith, okay, and they have given heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils. Why? Because they have tried to put time frames on the very restoration and the gathering of the house of Israel, when nobody knows when that particular time frame is, except the Father. We can see that in Acts. The apostles asked Messiah, will you at this time restore the kingdom back to Israel? And Yeshua said to them, basically, it's none of your business. It's not for you to know the times and the season that the Most High has put in his own power. But I tell you this, that you will receive power after the Spirit has come upon you. So Yeshua was even telling them then that wasn't their jurisdiction to even know that time in the season. Why? Because there are certain things that the Most High has put in his own power, and when the time is right, he will reveal those things in their time, because they have to be revealed in their time. Okay, so we need to be patient and wait, and not become so anxious and in a hurry, but just be patient and maintain a righteous life before the Most High. Make sure you're sowing good seed in your ground. Make sure you're not slumbering and sleeping when you're supposed to be watching and praying and watching over your field, so the enemy don't come in and sow the terror in your life. Same thing with the house of Israel. We see that the enemy has come in and sown in counterfeits. Okay, that's why Hebrew Israelites right now, they have a bad rep, they have a bad name, because we have certain Israelites who have not represented the nation of Israel well. There's a stigmatism. that has been placed upon the title Hebrew Israelite. Why? Because we got false grain, false tare. We got that darnel in the Greek, poisonous people. The enemy has sown in poisonous people, poisonous doctrine within the Hebrew Israelite community. That's why we got to make sure that we're weak. We got to make sure that we are being planted, or we are the planted of Yah, and that the enemy has not planted us. All right? Now look what he goes on to say. He says in verse 30, he says, let them grow together until what? The harvest. Until the harvest. Until that ingathering, that harvest. And in the time of harvest, I will say to the reapers, gather ye together first the tare, and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into the barn. So we got to wait to the time of the harvest, my brothers and sisters. That's what we got to wait. So what is the harvest? What is the indication of the revelation of the harvest? Messiah gives us that revelation in Matthew chapter 13, verse 39. Let's skip down to Matthew chapter 13, verse 39 in a haste. He says, the enemy that sold them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. So the harvest indicates the ending is the end of the world. The same way that in gathering, we read that in gathering is the end of the Shana, is the end of that revolution of time, is the end of that agricultural growing season, the in gathering. So the harvest is the end of the world. That's what it represents. When Yah begins to harvest, when he begins to gather his elect from the four winds of the earth, and he sent his angels to gather them. The reapers are the Melachim, are the angels that should gather the house of Israel. That's how we know that this is the end of the world. So this is why it's very important, my brothers and sisters, that we observe these feasts, because these feasts have great significance. It shows us not only what happened in the past, what is happening present, but what's going to happen in the future as well. Very important, especially if you are an Israelite, if you are a Gentile believer, you need to be observing the feast with fellow believers. You need to be in fellowship together. On these days, we gather, we edify each other. The teaching and the preaching of the word. We read from Torah, we read from the word of Yah, and encourage each other to be steadfast in the faith. We read in Exodus, we read in Leviticus that the ingathering is the end of the Shana, is the end of what? The year, or the Shana in the Hebrew. Now we know that there's 12 months in a Hebrew year, so it's not talking about the ending of a 12-month period, but it's talking about the ending of the agriculture or the growing season. Why? Because the three main feasts, which is Passover, Pentecost, Feast of Tabernacles, and Ingathering, is the three main feasts that Yah says that all males shall not come before him empty. What you think he's talking about? That's when they would bring their tithes to Jerusalem, and those tithes was what? Fruits, vegetables, and grains. Now, do you see the analogy here in Matthew chapter 13? These are the three agricultural feasts. So we can both look at this in a physical perspective, and we can look at this in a spiritual perspective prophetically. So these are things that we should reflect upon, my brothers and sisters. I want you to reflect upon these things. Let's continue on. Let's go to Matthew's verse 31. Matthew chapter 24, verse 31. It says, and he shall send his angel, his Melachim, with the great sound of the shofar, the trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. You see that? From one end of heaven to the other. So we saw in Matthew chapter 13, verse 39, he said that the reapers are the Melokim. So the wheat will go into the barn, and the tares shall be burnt with unquenchable fire. I have some teachings that I'm going to be doing on our prophetic word and insight segment concerning the judgments of the end time, of the coming of Yahshua the Messiah, and there shall be fire. It won't be water, but fire next time, all right? So I pray that this particular teaching was a great inspiration to your heart. Once again, my name is Rahab Hathwell bin Yaakov, and you've been viewing Israelites Relit Sukkot experience. And I just pray that you all will make an effort to observe these feasts and do them to the best of your ability, okay? Don't let nobody judge you in new moons and Sabbaths and feast days, for these things are the substance and a shadow of things to come, but the substance is of Messiah. Understand that, okay? Everybody have their different time, their different dates. That's why I don't get into dates and to, oh, it's supposed to be observed on this day, supposed to be observed on that day. Now, if it's too far-fetched, then we got to look at it. We got to come together and talk about it. But for that being said, you know, I don't think it's so much about, oh, this person is doing it this way or they doing it this time. The Most High is going to correct a lot of things that we are in error about when He comes. We're going to go and seek the mount of Yah, the mountain of Yah, and there He shall teach us His ways. We will know His ways, okay? So with that being said, we just need to do to the best of our ability and hold fast to those things that remain, those things that are true, those things that are honest, the things that Most High has revealed to us. Let's just do it by faith and don't be fake about it, all right? Don't be fake about it. Be sincere about doing those things, okay? So with that being said, I want to say shalom to all of you. I just want to say todah for you taking time out of your time to join with us, and we hope to see you all soon. With that being said, shalom.